Hey, this is a post-mortem on my SPCX options trading to date. Luckily, I made money on this, so it's a happy ending. But the useful lesson is that the first trade I ever did likely had some edge, and then the subsequent trades exposed how quickly I just naturally go into a reactive, improvised state, which doesn't really benefit me. So I'm able to provide clear evidence by showing the trades and the P&L as percentage of assets. This way you can map this scenario and this trading to your own account size. So my account is currently mid 5 figures in USD, which matters because option trading with like the size of contracts can create a much larger risk as percentage of assets. But as your assets grow, this kind of risk as percentage of should come down. Here is the simplified transaction record from the database. The record starts on June 16 with a July 17 330 strike call sold at $8.20 and bought back at 0.85. Then I flipped into the July 17 135 puts and closed and re-entered, then closed again. And then I sold one small call at the very end before I just said, okay, enough is enough. So on June 16th, SPCX was trading above 200. The option chain was extremely expensive since it was its first day of being quoted. So the very first day you could buy and sell options on this thing. And the far out of the money call premium looked like insane. I later realized that it was actually just the entire options chain. So if you sold almost any reasonable strikes on puts or calls, like they even went down. Because like the volatility came down. So the first decision though, since this thing was going to the moon and it was like the same market cap as like Microsoft or something at the time, the first decision was obvious, like fade that upside mania. So the 330 call is the cleanest trade in this whole set, and it made about 1.14% of assets in net P&L. I sold it for $8.20 and bought it back for 85 cents and captured almost 90% of the entire premium sold, which is quite good for short options. But the risk was not tiny. The assignment exposure was about half of assets, and a naked call has uncapped upside risk, which is brutal, if you know what that feels like. So trade 2 is where I already started probably overdoing it. After the stock sold off and I made all that money on the short call, I sold the July 17 $135 puts around $2.75 to $3.20 and bought them back at $1.90 the same day. So the trade made about 0.85% of assets in net P&L, but the assignment exposure was about more than assets, which is crazy. So because the large short put trade also made money, it would be easy to call this whole thing just good trading so far. I do not think that's honest. There was a ton of luck involved, especially with the second one. I sold the second trade at the perfect time down to the minute that day and got paid quickly. And so this result hid how much risk I actually put on during that day. But luckily I didn't hold it overnight. If it had crashed, I probably would have wanted to hold it overnight to be like, oh, I don't want to just sell at a loss. So this could have spiraled really quickly. On June 22nd, I re-entered again and I sold more $135 puts, but for a little bit more, around $3.43 and $3.50. And they quickly moved against me the same day and the day after. I ended up closing one at $4.10 and the other one at $6.80. So the re-entry of this third trade lost about 0.63 of assets. It was the same strike, the same expiry, and it just had a more realistic outcome finally. So I also sold at the very end of the fourth trade one very small weekly $175 call. By then I was just thinking like, okay, volatility is really just selling off completely, and the price was settling around 150, 155. So this made about 0.1% of assets, but most importantly, when I closed this, I closed the other remaining short puts, and I fully had to, stop and regroup. So the scoreboard in total is a bit strange. The net result was that I made 1.5% of assets in net profit, but the total premium sold was about 4.86% of assets. So I captured roughly 30% of the total premium that was sold. But during this whole campaign, the max put assignment exposure was at one point over 100% during the day. So overall, the result was good, but the process was just not clean enough to be like realistic or like long-term focused. So I need to make some changes in my system from like reviewing this. Before re-entering a trade for a second, third, or fourth time, I also need to rewrite sort of all the context of the trade. So like, what is the catalyst that's like moving this thing? What is the general thesis? What's happening with volatility, and what type of delta and maybe other Greeks am I looking for? And also, what is the total assignment exposure if I get assigned and if I'm on the short side? Hey, so going forward, I do not exactly know how or when I'll re-enter SpaceX, but I could trade it again in the future. There may be like a catalyst coming up with index flows, like the NASDAQ 100 could be adding this stock, and maybe that's going to do something and set something up. But that's not enough on its own to like know what's going to happen. The next trade, though, for sure needs to survive this the sizing test. I need to improve in that area, and overall, this was my general thinking process. I'm just here to document what I'm thinking, and this is not advice or recommendation. Okay, bye.